right, this is Bob Coppage, CEO Simplex-IT, crotchety geek, and host of this wondrous podcast, wondrous being an odd word. But anyway, Biz Tech Twists, where we talk about business and technology, but with a little bit of a different perspective. And when I think about different perspectives, and we're not going to go into this detail because, I've signed legal documents, I always think of Marnie Stockman, who is the founder and creator of basically Lifecycle Insights, which is a terrific tool to help organizations and managed service providers such as Simplex-IT to really dig down into the business process with our clients. And like, Marnie, how you doing? And tell us more about yourself, because I don't really pay attention to those sort of things.
Great. Happy to be here. It's exciting times at Lifecycle Insights for sure. I started the usual path to CEO of a software company as a high school math teacher.
That's the way it always works, I hear.
So often I run into that. But I do tell folks when I'm giving presentations, like I probably know something about sales because I sold pre-calculus to 16-year-olds. So if you can do that, right, you might be able to build a business. And it's interesting in the course of those conversations where I start with that as my background, people will end up saying, well, that's interesting how much education does in fact relate to business, to which I say, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm excited to come here and chat about such things.
Absolutely. And that's really what the key thing, because you and I have known each other professionally for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
3.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been like 6 months, 6 of the happiest months of my life. But it's one of those where every single freaking time I talk to you, you bring up the teacher thing.
I'm so annoying.
It really is. And most people are annoying in generalist way, but you're very specific and very focused on it. But the key thing, all kidding aside.
Uniquely annoying. I'm going to be putting that on my LinkedIn profile.
There you go. Absolutely. Uniquely annoying. That could be, that whole, what are my personal attributes? Well, I'm uniquely annoying, And it's one of those where there are so many times, especially when you talk about people who are looking to develop their own personal careers or people are looking to hire, which is a big issue right now, where someone looks at the job description and they say, I don't have those specific skills. I don't have that specific title. I'm not an analyst per se. I'm not this per se. I'm not that per se. And either the person who's hiring, I can never find someone with that specific skill, or the person who's looking for a job. And this is one where I'm going to be, from what I understand, a little bit sexist or elitist or the like. But my understanding is that women are very quick, and oddly enough, so are apparently veterans, are very quick to drop an application for a job because they don't match the list of requirements specifically.
Yep.
And it's interesting because I think people in the hiring position also are, well, that person won't work out because they don't do these things.
That doesn't match the profile you thought you were hiring for.
Exactly. Yeah. And so both parties really lose out on a great opportunity. Yeah. And since, again, you qualify from A, you're really annoying, but B, you uniquely annoying, sorry. But B, you also have that story of the teaching. And so that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit, about how, career A can actually lead to opportunities in career B.
It's interesting because I was just doing a presentation earlier, and somebody asked me, who could I hire to be a business consultant that won't talk flux capacitors, speeds, and feeds in terms of technology? And we were talking about teaching, of course. One of the lines I always use is teachers are great English to English translators, right? And the English is business, right? So what is your business doing, right? And then technology is the other, right? So I know we have solutions that can solve for these business pains. Let me find out what your business pains are so I can help you ease those pains. Of course, they would need a technical human to actually get into the weeds of the flux capacitors, et cetera. But they're very good at managing multiple perspectives and multiple desired outcomes, right? The other interesting piece that people don't often think about, so in the same conversation, we were talking about data, and very few people think, teachers, data. But go look up data-driven decision-making, and that is what educators do every day, right? When we're grading tests, and we're highlighting red, yellow, green students that need intervention, students that need enrichment, et cetera. Teachers are very good at looking at mass of data and coming up with a remediation plan for students. And in technology, all of the time, what are managed service providers doing? They're building remediation plans based on risks, red, yellow, green, that they see in the space. So those are two of the things that come to mind immediately when I think about, how teachers fit into non-traditional roles, aside from the able to sell, pre-calc to 16-year-olds bit.
You're good. We're going to hear pre-calc a lot during this time.
Yeah, I can do geometry as well if you would like.
That's what the acorn says when he grew up. Geometry.
Geometry, yeah.
That's right.
You're going to lead me down my squirrel calculus story.
and that's when the show went off the rails. But I think it's interesting because there's that whole comprehension concept. When we're talking about IT, when we're talking about technology and business, for so long we were able to essentially say, look, trust me, it's a server, it does what it does. The program does what it does. Don't worry about that. You don't have to worry about it. We've got an internet connect. We got all that sort of stuff. And the business owners or management or however you want could basically say, yep, good, I'm cool. But
Great.
now with such an integration between technology and whatever a business is trying to accomplish, they have to comprehend. And at the end of the day, call it what you will, students in a teaching environment have to comprehend if you're going to call it a success.
Yep.
So, I like the idea of comprehension. One of the things I do when I'm talking with people or I'm talking with the business-oriented person, the non-tech, is I basically lead with tell me to geek it up or geek it down. But it's almost like a volume concept.
Geek down a notch, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, again, flux capacitor, I prefer dilithium crystals, Star Wars or Star Trek versus, Back to the Future, but to each their own. But it's one of those where just because I know something doesn't mean I'm passing on the value to the
Absolutely.
client.
As a matter of fact, you're probably causing some fear and anxiety in attempting to communicate it at a level that somebody doesn't understand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And or I'm coming off as I'm so much smarter and better than you. And that whole condescension thing. IT always has that condescension stereotype.
Because you're used to being right about all of the technology, right? And the interesting piece, though, is
and everything else.
This brings and all the other things. Except I talk to a lot of managed service providers who feel this imposter syndrome of, I know I'm supposed to be, we were just discussing this phrase, we're supposed to help deliver business outcomes through the thoughtful use of technology. But I'm not a lawyer. How can I help consult on their business outcomes? Right? Well, no offense. I want my lawyer to be better at lawyering than their managed service provider. So let them tell you about their business and explain the troubles that they run into, the risks, the concerns, what keeps them up at night, and what data they're interested in having, because that's when the light bulb's going to go off for the managed service provider of, oh, yes, that, we actually can help in this area. We can eliminate this risk. We can provide this data in a unique way to you. We can help make you more productive, et cetera. So that's how I get that connection piece of, let them be the expert in what they're experts in. They don't want you to be the expert in that. That would be intimidating.
Well, and actually, even though we're talking about managed service providers, because we're both in this industry, this really works for anybody who's delivering a service to a client where the client doesn't necessarily understand all attributes of the service. So this could be true for a manufacturing process. Manner.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it's one of the, where it's interesting, because you were talking about you try to find that angle, that perspective, the way they learn. And again, that gets back to teaching. If you're going to try to get a student who's having this trouble with, okay, I'll say it, pre-calculus, to know something about them so that there's something that you can get so that they can latch on to that aspect of agreement, that aspect of understanding. That's a powerful tool for them to then catch on to what you're saying as an add-on. And the same thing translates over to the technical side.
Well, and I will tell my squirrel calculus story now. So we're going all the way to calculus at this point. So here's an exciting one. I knew that was going to happen. I fell for your trap. You did. Rectilinear motion, particle on a line, right? And the questions in the math textbook are always, when is this particle going to stop? And I cannot tell you how little the majority of humans care about the answer to that question. But I was teaching this to 16-year-olds who care very much about driving. And we live in a rural area, and there are constantly squirrels darting out in front of your car. And if you think about what that squirrel does, it jumps out, runs back and forth like it can't decide, right?
Right.
And maybe makes it to the other side of the road. And so as I was telling the students, all of these problems turned into, did the squirrel know calculus? So I would ask the questions, and as they were trying to decide where the squirrel ran, if the squirrel landed in between, like on a graph where the car would be, we would say the squirrel didn't know calculus because the squirrel got hit by the car. But otherwise, and the kids thought that was hilarious. I still, to this day, there are 28-year-olds who will come up to me and say, every time I drive and a squirrel runs out in front of me, once it gets past, I'll say, that squirrel knew calculus. And I feel like you've got to connect with what the people are interested in.
Absolutely. My story along those lines would be centripetal acceleration, which is the thing that keeps the water in the bucket when you twirl the bucket. Except he would use, and this is probably a little bit dated, but we're talking about the mid 70s, how you would use that when you are in the car with a date. And if you you take a hard turn, if she slides over, because you could do that in cars back then, then you know that that she might be interested in you. Whereas if she holds on to the door handle for dear life, exactly, then you're seeing one of the dates that I had being replayed in my mind. But it's interesting because you always, anytime you have metaphors or stories, and storytelling is such an undervalued skill set that basically allows you to say, okay, I get the core concepts now, then I can build on that. And again, to your point, that's something the teachers have to do and have to do wonderfully. But I think to a certain degree, anyone who is gifted or experienced in a particular skill can turn that skill, or can turn some of those core values or core knowledge into things that are usable in other careers. It's not just teachers.
Oh, absolutely. And when I think of data-driven folks and attention to detail, right? I think of all of the nurses that are looking at tons of bits of data every day. And if you've sat in a hospital room with anyone, there's tons of things going on, but they know exactly where to look and when and why to adjust, et cetera. So there are tons of folks out there who really don't realize almost how to remarket themselves and their skills for what they are.
Right. And to give and keep in mind, I'm married to a quasi-retired nurse, and I have 2 out of 3 daughters are nurses. So my paperwork will be fine. I don't know what else will happen, but my paperwork will be fine. But there's such a process driven and a procedural driven. Yeah. And, you talk, going back to the managed service world, so many of us are like, oh, can we just follow the checklist? Can we just do that? Yep. Whereas nurses, to a certain degree, are, oh, my God, there's a checklist. Thank God I know how to do this stuff now.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because my daughter is going to take a cross-country trip and kind of solo. And I said, checklist manifesto. She said, what's that? I said, it's a book. And it talked about how it improved healthcare outcomes across the world.
It's a good book.
By creating a checklist, right? And I said it started because there was a really bad story about somebody who got the wrong leg amputated. But now part of that checklist is for the doctor to write on the leg that's having surgery done, right? So that we are all committed to this. And it's a simple checklist. But I think that process-oriented human, absolutely critical for any business.
And so you could almost take this to the point of when you are in a situation where you're looking to get out of career A and you're starting to take a look at career B. Obviously, there's that, are you going to enjoy it? Is this something you're going to go with? But take a look at what they're asking you to do, and then take a look at your base skills, the things that you've learned to do very, very well. And is there an application there?
Yeah.
And like what you've done with the teaching concept.
And it's interesting because in that remarketing yourself, you may find places where you didn't even realize that that is what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you get back to the whole Karate Kid, the Miyagi, the thing with the wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off, yeah.
To be clear, I am not suggesting if you worked at a car wash that you suddenly put yourself out as a ninja. don't think
Yeah,
that's
maybe not.
but you'd be closer perhaps to a ninja,
Yeah.
just slightly
Yeah.
closer. But yeah, and then the same thing's true from the hiring standpoint of not, and you can do this. They actually have two perspectives that they can look at. Not only from the can that person adapt and adjust because of the sort of things that they did, but can they also bring skills to my organization and to my team that I'm missing? So
Yeah.
they may
It
have,
may be a culture fit.
yeah,
And the other piece is, remember, the same brain that caused the problem can't always solve the problem. So an outside perspective is often, people stop me at our booths and events regularly and say, what space did you all come from? Because this is not the way this space thinks. And
yeah.
when I say education, they're like, of course, you've made it red, yellow, green, simple, right? Of course, you came from the education space. You have explained this to us in a way that it hadn't come from before.
But so what's the willingness on the part of the person who's doing the hiring? What does that person have to be willing to do in order to take advantage of it, as opposed to bringing someone on board who is just going to fail and fail epically?
Well, I think a lot of it is about the expectations of, first, I'm not looking for the canned profile. I'm looking for the behaviors that can drive an outcome, right? So a profile would be, I'm expecting somebody with 3 years experience in this field that has done this type of thing and knows this exact product, right? Those are all like checklist type of items, as opposed to type of thinker, right?
Right.
I'm looking for a problem solver, or someone who's creative, or someone who understands. So we don't have any sales folks in our company. We only have customer success folks. And I always have them read some books right out of the gate. And I pretty much say, if this is your mentality, right, that we help deliver what the customer wants, then I don't care if you had a sales background or a customer success background previously. If you can, so you have to look outside of, I don't need the experience in the checklist of what would make a good job description, but have you experience in delivering outcomes that are comparable to the outcomes I'm looking to deliver?
And they could be similar, but totally different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So success, right? Like, again, sales, I would say I'm a very good salesperson, but I've literally never had a job with a quota other than to get students to pass some math tests, right? And so
Go ahead, say pre-calculus. I know you want to.
I was going to say geometry on that one.
Okay, all right. Not judging.
Yeah, but that's right. Can you line up that? And you could ask the question, how did that happen? Well, how did that happen? It was a few ways. First, I used data to look at where they were and where they needed to be. So in sales, what are you looking at? They've got a problem, and do we have a solution that'll help solve it, right? Do I have a way of communicating the gap between those two pieces, right? And can I create a time frame to do that in a meaningful way that everybody gets the results that they want? The same process, right? In one case, I'm making sure you can do a proof, and in the other case, I'm delivering a solution, that helps you drive your business.
Cool. So it's also interesting because you could be in a situation where you're trying to add to a team, an existing team. So this is another player versus another where you're looking for a specific role player. And there's a difference between those because in the team, you're looking for someone to be number 4. You've already got person A, B, and C, and they're all doing the same role.
Yeah.
But now you're going to introduce person 4, but person 4 has different skill sets. And that's going to be interesting because to a certain degree, you have the opportunity that person 4 could actually influence 1, 2, and 3, because they bring skills that 1, 2, and 3 don't have. But then person 1, 2, and 3 also have to support person 4 because the person 4 doesn't have certain technical skills. So you need to make sure that everybody understands that basically what's going on.
To look at it as a strength instead of a weakness, right? So why are we excited that person 4 is coming to the table? Because they're bringing this outside perspective, whatever that may be, right? What are we trading off for that? Well, what we're trading off is they don't actually know the buttons to click. Right. And so we're going to have to help with this, again, communication, but to have a cross kind of enablement plan on how everybody gets to share what their strengths are and bring that to the table. I think that's an important role of leadership
Yeah.
to be able to say why different is not bad. But it takes the right kind of leader to be able to do that.
And I think also the leader has to be sure that that need that person 4 is filling has been communicated effectively regardless of person 4. So it's not something like, I decided we had this problem and here's the person who's going to solve it because you 3 can't do it. But instead we talk about, we have this issue, we have this, we don't follow checklists well enough. We don't develop checklists well enough. We have this opening, by the way. Hey, remember that thing I was talking about, a couple of weeks ago about the checklist? I've got this idea. I've got this person that I want to take a look at as far as, depending upon where person 1 through 3 are involved with interviewing and the like. But to basically say this already existing issue, challenge, need, I've got this person who's going to help us deal with it.
Well, and it'd be interesting to almost say, wouldn't it be nice if we could grab someone who had skills that were good at checklists, reading data charts, following up, right? Attention to detail, start listing again the behaviors, not specific tasks. And the team says, yeah. And then can we think of any roles where that happens? And then throw out, well, how about a nurse, right?
Yeah.
And then they can kind of see like, right, when I look at it that way, you have to help reframe that so they're not picturing the same type of person that they've always pictured in that role.
Yep. Agreed.
I think it also, in the land of you can't solve the problem with the brain that caused it, but I also think this helps diversify a company and the culture because you get different types of brains that solve different types of problems, in a myriad of ways. And I think that always helps grow a company because it just brings a creative element. Because you're adding sort of this little forcing function that's going to make folks think a little bit differently.
So that's actually interesting. I hadn't really thought about the concept of diversification or culture from what's the actual job history of the people you bring in. So, but we're going to take a break. But when we come back, I want to talk about that a little bit more because otherwise I'm going to go back to unicorns. You're going to go back to pre-calculus and, we're going to get stuck with that. So we will be right back after this message.
Don't let IT overwhelm you. Simplex-IT's Learning Center provides easy-to-understand answers to your most commonly asked IT questions. Our videos cover both technical and non-technical topics, everything from cybersecurity to cloud computing, managed services to co-managed services, and how easy it is to work with us. All so you can stay ahead of the game and maximize your IT. We have over 100 videos, so visit simplex-it.com today and look for our Learning Center. And not all videos have Bob in them.
Wait, what?
Simplify your complex IT with Simplex-IT.
All right, and we are back. BizTech Twist, Bob Coppage, Marnie Stockman. And we were talking before about a place I didn't expect to go to, which is diversification and culture and how people with different professional backgrounds can actually help with that. Let's talk about from a diversification standpoint, because usually, and I don't mean anything, derogatory on this. When we talk about diversification, we're usually talking culture, gender, so on and so forth. But I never really thought about it from a professional background.
Well, I come from education where 90%
I heard that part. Okay.
I think you heard a rumor, are female. And I landed in IT where 90% of the folks that I work with are male, right? And so I have had folks say to me that it feels different or whatever, right? Based on the fact that I bring this sort of kitschy education. Yeah, you can tell she's a teacher. When I give a presentation, folks will say, you're making me nervous or you're looking at my paper, that type of thing. But it's interesting just because it brings a different perspective. So for sure in the gender role, bringing more teachers in, they're predominantly, there's a large female population in teaching and then there's a large male population in IT. And I just do think it brings it just brings a different approach to the business.
Well, and I think, again, the key thing being that the organization is open to taking a look at that. But it is absolutely, however you define it, diversification, as long as they can still get the job done.
Absolutely.
Multiple perspectives are better.
Multiple perspectives are better. Yeah, that was the end result of it. But I do think when you start looking outside the traditional, what I expected to see, you'll see some faces that look a little different than you maybe thought you were going to see.
Yep. Absolutely cool. But, and also now based on this conversation, also to hear the backgrounds that are different. I didn't expect to be talking with, a tech person who, spent X number of years being a nurse, being a teacher, being a, whatever.
Veteran, which you mentioned earlier. Oddly enough, somehow of the 5 employees we have before we got acquired, 2 were veterans, right? Again, service driven, team player driven. I do find it interesting just to get some different perspectives from the roles that they started in.
Yeah. And again, so as has been so often the case, again, from what I've heard and read and the like, people don't realize that is such a benefit that they can bring to an organization, especially an organization that they probably want to grow with. Because
absolutely. I have teachers regularly reach out and say, what else would I be good at? Or all I know is teaching, right?
Yeah.
So they've got a very narrow mindset of, I want to be a teacher my whole life. And I had this idea of this is what it did. And they don't realize the elements of sales and marketing, data-driven decision-making. Like I said, right there, all of these components, communication in general. I know several teachers that have retired and gone on to become content creators for marketing because they create a lot of content when you're a teacher. So it is interesting when you look at the outputs, the backgrounds come from different perspectives, but again, they can still drive the same business need.
And it's almost a self-defeating concept. This is all I know how to do.
Absolutely. They don't realize.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they've put themselves in a box that nobody else put them in, but they just had in their mind, this is the way it always was. What else do I know? I literally had lunch with somebody that wants to start a business as they're retiring from education. And she said, what else do I know how to do? I said, oh my goodness, so many things. And let's start with the fact that you're in education, so you can do it on a very limited budget. Right?
Yeah.
So you know how to, it's almost like gamification, right? I've got resources, I've got a team I can pull together, I've got objectives, and I just need to create a tactical plan. So every day's lesson plan is a strategic plan every day, right? And what business doesn't need strategic plans?
And part of the challenge is, I would assume, and again, speaking as someone with absolutely zero experience and zero real conceptual involvement with the situation, so I'm eminently qualified, to speak on this, because I'm a guy. But there are also a good number of people who will buy into that. That's all you need. That's all you know. Let's face it. I mean, teachers are minimized.
Yeah. Sadly, 100%. But that is where they need to reframe the way they talk about what they do.
Right.
Right. As a matter of fact, I used to recruit for a school system, and I said, can I change this checklist and just ask how good they are at herding squirrels? Right. Because it's mayhem in a kindergarten classroom and all of these pieces. And what I really want to know is that they can keep calm and carry on and meet everybody's needs. Right. So reframing it for yourself or with others, talk to a business consultant, a coach that can help say but what's really behind the tactical output that you're giving? What is the skill that's driving it?
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot here because it's fun. You're talking to a group of teachers, and the teachers are basically, and again, teachers who want to continue to be teachers, that's absolutely fantastic. Look at new careers, fantastic.
Oh, please, we need them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What would you suggest that they do to do self-inventory from a standpoint of they're looking to do a career change or the like, but they don't know what they do so go for it.
Well, I think the first thing is that a lot of teachers think they don't know business because they don't have an experience with that. So the whole notion of departments and what is a job in a business is new to them. So I think one of the first things I would do is say, let's look at what a business does. We have this general administrative role. We have product development, right? Research and develop. We have sales, we have marketing, and we have, some communication pieces. Let's think about what you like to do in education, right? So if I've got an English teacher versus a science teacher, the things they love about the type of work that they do is a little bit different. But to explain the roles to them would be the first thing I would do, because in the sales, customer support, success world, I had no idea what a customer success manager, CSM, meant nothing to me when I was a teacher. And when I explain that to teachers, because a lot of folks reach out to me and say, what is a customer success manager, right? When I tell them about that department and the whole, I look for a business problem that I'm helping my client solve and looking to see if my product is the right solution and connecting the dots, like, that is what I do every day. So I think the first thing they would need to do would be to learn the types of options and then inventory. Like you said, what work do they like to do? Do they like to write? Do they like to communicate? Do they prefer data? Do they like process oriented, right? Or do they like teamwork? Because that starts to line up with the roles inside businesses when you reframe the way you think about, right? What is it? Do you like checking the papers and scoring it and determine a remediation plan? Or would you rather be creative and come up with the hook at the beginning of a lesson that gets kids fired up about doing that, right? There's your marketer. Go hire them for marketing,
Absolutely. So it really gets down to, you need to do a little bit of exploration as far as what that world out there does, but then you've got to do a lot of self-searching. But you kept on going back to that, what you like. You kept on going back to that because there's a bunch of things we all do in our lives, but that doesn't mean we like them.
Yeah, fair. But, I think anything I've done well, it's a combo platter of passion and persistence.
Yeah.
And so, I don't aim, I want to spend more time doing the work that I like to do. Right. And so what is it that you like about teaching? I've observed so many teachers, and it's very evident when you've watched hundreds of different teachers, what some of them really love about it. Some of them love the storytelling. Some of them love the one-on-one, like, I want to find out what makes Bob tick, and I want to help fix this. I haven't actually run into that one, but you get what some of them love the data come on. There are lots of pieces of the job. So what is it that you love to do? What gets you fired up every day? There's certainly something at work where you're like, I could do without that. Well, what is that part? Let's not aim for that part of business then.
Right. Absolutely. So it just, and again, we're talking about teachers, but you could use that for any profession, any person who's looking for that career change.
Absolutely.
And then
I love the first example, because if they're process oriented and they love to build those, somebody loves building those processes. It's not me, so I don't talk about that one a lot. I'm aiming for somebody that likes to fill out expense forms, because that's like my least favorite thing on the planet. When people ask, what are you terrible at? I was like, I just don't want to document the work, right? So let's find someone that loves that, right? I want them to come work for me, because I don't want to do that work.
Absolutely. But you're open to, I don't want to say modify the job description, but you're open to be more creative in terms of what role or what skills does that person have to fill that job. Yeah.
Or what the experience looks like that demonstrates those skills.
Yeah.
As to one of the skills, it's the experience that demonstrates it.
So so the person who is looking for that career change, we'll go back to the teacher again, they also need to be able to ask, are you willing to look beyond? And don't be afraid to ask.
I think the research piece is important, because the teacher is going to have to do some of the English to English translation. The nurse is going to have to do some of the translation for the company that's hiring. And this is where you use your creativity to really stand out. I've posted job descriptions before, and I'll get 263 people that apply for the job, right? And I'm definitely looking for something that stands out, right? So for you to be able to do a comparison of what I'm looking for and why your previous career as a baker makes you perfect for my job, I'm in for a listen, right?
No,
This might
absolutely.
bring something new to the party.
Well, and also the fact that, and now we're talking about the cover letter to a certain degree.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you've taken that additional step, and it can be a boilerplate cover letter because you're applying to 6 different jobs that are looking for marketing.
Yeah.
So you've got
Yep.
this one cover letter that talks about, I realize I don't have a great history in marketing, but consider the following things that I've learned how to do as a teacher. I know how to boom,
Correct.
boom, 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 boom. I think this
Yep.
is great for a marketing position. And you can use that conversation, or you can use that piece for multiple job postings.
For example, I am absolutely going to put uniquely annoying on mine. And why am I uniquely annoying? Because I'm going to hound you to get the job done. That's actually a strength some places. Right?
Absolutely. Well,
maybe not good to, but
but I think it's good from the standpoint, like the term I use for myself is crotchety old geek. And,
yeah,
you know, no one who knows me is going to fight that one. They're basically, it's basically the way it is. But it's one of those where it's a differentiator, but it also, right out of the gate, it basically says, is this the type of person I don't want to talk to? Because I really don't want to talk to somebody who's going to be that flippant about crotchetiness or what. Fine, let's end the conversation quickly.
right. Thanks for cutting that off right where I need
Absolutely.
to.
And the same thing to a certain degree is if someone is not interested in looking beyond the very specific job description thing, then let's not pretend.
Let's identify that right out of the gate. This is not going to work. Not a good fit for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that from that perspective. So cool. All right. So wrapping up. Someone wants to look at essentially themselves, and they're sitting there and going, I've got a dead-end career. And again, whether they be teachers, nurses, mechanics, whatever, they want to self-inventory themselves as far as what's your thoughts as far as how to do that little self-exploration.
So there is the inventory of the actual tasks that you do, but I also think there's some personality profiles that are interesting, and almost any of them give you some stories of like, these make good this type of role, that type of role. So I think looking at, again, not just the actual skills, right? I was a good teacher, so I am good at marketing, right? But also, what is my personality? Am I somebody that wants to be out front, in front of people presenting? Am I more introverted? Do I prefer to do behind the scenes? That's an important piece of it. And then the whole notion of, what are your passions, right? Let's list what you love to do. You know, I'm always a fan of Jim Collins' kind of hedgehog concept. What are you genetically predisposed to be better at than anybody else, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. And you can almost reverse that from the standpoint of the hiring person.
Yes.
And essentially do some of the same personality analysis, but from a what would really add to your organization. What is it?
Right. If you suddenly said, I need an extrovert who likes to communicate, right? I didn't say nurse, fire chief. You know, I'm looking for an extrovert who likes to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you need someone, you know, who is uniquely annoying. Or you need someone who is a crotchety old geek.
Absolutely.
Together we can...
excessively marketable. Because there aren't a lot of us out there. If you're looking for a uniquely annoying, a crotchety old geek pair, like, you're narrowing down your focus for sure.
We should go out on the road and solve crimes.
Why not? I think that'd be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Make a great show.
Absolutely. So, Marnie, how can people learn more about your group, your company, yourself, all that?
Oh, well, lifecycleinsights.io or scalepad.com is probably the best place to go, because since we've been acquired, can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thankfully, I'm the only uniquely annoying Marnie Stockman on LinkedIn, so I'm easy to find.
Absolutely. And I will say Marnie is incredibly productive in terms of content, especially aiming around helping managed service providers help their clients in terms of really creating great business plans and creating the technology business review or quarterly business review that we all talk about. We've been with them now for about a year, and it's a game changer. So it's a great product, and I hate saying that in front of people who are responsible for the product. So this pained me to say this. So terrific. And with that, that wraps up another episode of BizTech Twists. This is again Bob Coppage, CEO of Simplex-IT, Crotch-Heel Geek, as we've discussed. And thanks, Marnie, once again. Now, you know the idea that there is clicking involved. What you may not know is that there is something that looks like a bell. Sometimes it looks like a thumbs up. These are the things that you should go after and you should click because, after all, that's what cool people do, and that's what everybody does in France. And you want to be part of France, too. And if you subscribe, you'll also hear about the latest stuff that we've posted and possibly hear about what's going on in France. So take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.